You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The number keeps rising. Let's make it 10 now for your Pittsburgh Penguins, the fifth longest winning streak in franchise history. Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. A 6-2 beatdown of the Philadelphia Flyers on this Thursday night. Again, 10 in a row. They'll try to make it 11 on Saturday afternoon when they go to Dallas to take on Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn and the Dallas Stars. We'll have a full game preview for that for Friday's episode. This obviously is just going to be a full episode focused on the game tonight. But, what a performance again from Pittsburgh, especially on a back-to-back. My first biggest takeaway that I have overall, they took care of business, and that's exactly what the doctor ordered. No Claude Giroux, there's no Travis Konechny, no Ivan Provorov, no Sean Couturier, no Ryan Ellis, no Travis Sanheim. The list goes on and on. A lot of those players are in COVID protocol. Some of those players are hurt. There's about 7 of the 18 regular skaters are out for Philadelphia. This was basically a win on the stat sheet. Well, a win on paper, I should say. And then it translated to a win on the ice overall. You saw Pittsburgh jump out to that 3-0 lead. It was over at that point. The Flyers were not going to score 3 goals, especially with that depleted of a lineup. But, it was a bit of a slow start. I thought Pittsburgh was dictating play a little bit, but Philadelphia was, still playing not too bad. But then the Penguins started to take over. You saw the goals come in, from Bryan Rust. Jake Guentzel gets one. That first one, that was a disgusting pass from Kris Letang. And he continues to play at such a high level this season. The thing is, I would have him as a Norris finalist if it weren't for Victor Hedman, Cale Makar, and Adam Fox, or Devontae's. It's just those 4 players have been just as good, if not better than Tanger this year. And, that's why, they're at the top of the Norris list right now, though. If you look at Dom Luchuskin's article from The Athletic today, he had Letang at the number 5, number 6 spot among the Norris, finalists, who he's looking at per his model. I would have to assume, hopefully, he climbs up from there. But that still doesn't take away, even though he wouldn't be one of my finalists, that doesn't take away what Letang is doing this year. I just want them to announce the extension ASAP at this point. Give him a 3 to 4 year deal. I've said it before, if you can get him, a little below 7, I think that's fine. I don't think he's going to, command a high number, especially with where he's at age-wise for his career. But, I've said this a lot on the podcast as well. The older he gets, the younger he gets at the same time, and the better he plays. And, it was almost like that no-look pass to Rust at the corner of the net. Carter Hart has no chance on that goal, was able to make it 1-0. And it's just like, you don't teach a pass like that. But, if you go, back a little bit before the Letang pass, watch what Sidney Crosby does in the corner. He's able to corral the puck, win that puck battle, but then fire a gorgeous saucer pass cross ice to Letang, who is wide open, probably through 4 to 5 to 6 sticks. Somehow was not broken up. Letang is able to get it again, like I just said, get it to Rust, opens up the scoring, and then Rust scores again just a few moments later. That's now 7 goals. At the time, it was 7 goals in his last 7 freaking periods. He is red hot right now. And, I always see the same usual suspects on social media during games and just, just going on message boards and stuff, clowning the so-called super genius for talking crap on Bryan Rust. I've talked about him many times on this podcast. I'm not going to give him the time of day other than to say that he's a flat-out idiot for how he talks about hockey. So there's my only take about the so-called super genius in the city of Pittsburgh. But he's just playing at a really high level right now. I know it was a slow start for him this season. He was battling numerous injuries, as I talked about on Wednesday's episode, but he's firing on all cylinders right now. I know he may not want to come off the top power play, but with how Evan Rodrigues is going, and we'll get to him later on in the show, I think he's going to potentially have to come off, but I don't think that's going to really screw things up for him, just because you can put him on the second unit and he's still getting chance after chance with Sidney Crosby and Jake Guentzel on a nightly basis. I mean, that's one of the underlying numbers wise, that's one of the 5 best first lines in hockey right now. Go to Money Puck, go to Natural Stat Trick. I believe per Money Puck, it's the second best, if I'm not mistaken. So that overall, the 5v5 numbers tonight, the Penguins controlled right about 51% of the shot attempts, 51% of the scoring chances for. They lost the battle in high danger. They actually lost the battle. Yeah, I almost like tripped over myself there. But at 5v5, it was only 3 goals for, 2 goals against. But if you go to all situations, that's where the Penguins really made the mark, especially, on the top power play. 52% of the shot attempts, they had 55% of the scoring chances. High danger, it was basically even. Expected goals for the Penguins, 2.84 to 2.13 for the Flyers. So it was a little bit closer than what the final score indicated. I think part of that was because the Penguins had a little bit of a lackluster second period. And I talked about this on my Twitter account. I'll say it here for you all that are not on social media, which, that's not a bad thing. Social media that has a lot of goods, has a lot of bads. I'll say that. But I think that comes with the territory, just having an off period on the back-to-back, right? You're not going to play a full 60 minutes at times on the second half, especially after an emotional win. I know you're playing your arch rivals, though this has really not been the Penguins' biggest rivalry throughout the last few years. I would say the Capitals have taken that top spot, at least in my opinion. But, there was always going to be a little bit of a lull. Tar Reardon said to Emily Kaplan on the ESPN Plus broadcast that he thought they were sloppy during the second period, and I would agree. The Flyers were able to make it a little bit of a game with about, 12, 11 minutes left in the period, thanks to a goal from Cam Atkinson. He's actually been pretty good since coming over from Columbus, which has surprised me a little bit. But, there were definitely some sloppy passes. Tristan Jarry had to come up with 10 Bell saves right at the end of that period that could have made it 3-2 and potentially have a different vibe going into the third period. But he did what he has been doing best this season, and just making timely save after timely save. He was sensational tonight, as he's been all season, as I just said. But the third period came, and the Penguins, again, they were able to take care of business and just keep the Flyers on their heels, and they were able to outscore the Flyers 3-1 in that period. I mean, Jake Guentzel tonight, just ridiculous at this point. That's, 2 more goals. The one that it looked like it wasn't in, but it was for sure in. Parallax angle ain't going to save, caught a hot there. So that one was for sure in, and then he just makes that beautiful move on Hart later on in the third. You have Evan Rodrigues just taking Carter Hart's soul and freaking taking it somewhere. That's Carter Hart's soul. It is way gone at this point. I don't know where I was going with that reference. I totally screwed it up, but we're just going to roll with it at this point. We'll have more on that goal coming up here in the next segment. I loved seeing the Penguins light up Carter Hart. I did touch on this on my social media. I'll say it here as well again. I kind of felt bad for Hart during this game because he's actually been pretty good this year. I mean, he's top 10 in goals saved above expected. He just has had no help around him all year. The Flyers, it doesn't help that the Flyers defense is absolute cheeks. I mean, that's just a bad unit. Despite, even with Ryan Ellis, I don't like a lot of their defensemen. I think Sanheim has been pretty decent this year, but Provorov is not right. Braun is really not that good. Ristolainen stinks. They have Kevin Connaughton getting minutes on an every night basis at this point. He's played on numerous teams throughout his NHL career. But, it's just been a season from hell for Philadelphia due to so many reasons. But again, I will never not love seeing the Penguins light up Kata hot, as they like to say up there in Philly. And so, at the end of the day, the Penguins took care of business, but, there's still a lot more to get to for the show. We're going to go into some play about Sidney Crosby. We're going to go into that no goal call for the Flyers and why. At first glance, I thought it was wrong, but on second glance, I've come around a little bit on it, and I understand why the official blew the whistle there. Do a little dive into Evan Rodrigues' goal. And then, we still got to get into Brian Boyle and the impending returns of a couple other really great Penguins players. Those will be coming back hopefully on Saturday. So stick with me through here with this next commercial break. All right, so we're back here on this episode with the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Starting us off with this segment, the Evan Rodrigues goal. The pass that he got was awesome on that one, but look at the move he made. I mean, last season, he wouldn't even have thought to go backhand, forehand, past Hart. But as I just said a few minutes ago, he took his soul and took it to another dimension. There we go. That's the saying I think I was looking for. He legit took it to a whole new planet or whatever, because he owned Hart there. He had no chance to save that puck, and he continues to play at such a high level for the Penguins right now. I hope they can extend him at this point, because honestly, he might be pricing himself out of Pittsburgh if he continues with this kind of production. Danny Shirey of DK Pittsburgh Sports tweeted out the goal. He had a lot of Buffalo fans quote tweeting that tweet saying, well, Ralph Kruger, you ruined another one, because the Buffalo Sabres just really stunk under him. I wouldn't say that he ruined him. I just think that Rodrigues just matured a lot throughout the offseason, and, he's finally in a stable situation where he's playing with much better players. But this is also not a fluke, because he's been able to, work hard over the offseason, especially on that shot and his playmaking ability, and just, work on all aspects of his game. And now you're seeing it pay off, and it's a sight to behold. ESPN Plus actually had something on the broadcast tonight where it's like money per goal. And Rodrigues, for every goal he scores, it was like $71.4 thousand, just because of how cheap his contract is. That's the third cheapest in the NHL. He's getting closer to 20 goals at this point. I believe the only two players above him was Troy Terry and I'm like blanking on the other one. I know one of them was Troy Terry, but of the top five, Rodrigues was third, just because of how little his contract is. And those are the kind of moves that a contending team has to get right. And Ron Hextall recognized that. For a GM like him, this job isn't that hard, right? You have your contending core in place with Crosby, Malkin, Letang. You have a goaltender who's playing his ass off this season. You have, Jake Guentzel, who's great. Bryan Rust. Jeff Carter is your third line center. Kasperi Kapanen, hopefully at some point, will be rescued from the gulag again. But it's all about getting the moves around that core, right? And he did just that this offseason with getting Brock McGinn to fill that Tanev spot, getting Rodrigues back. Obviously, no one saw this level of him coming, but you still need that depth scoring, and he has provided that and then some this season. So, for a contending team, especially with the Penguins, you got to get all these moves out. Danton Heinen, he's almost at 10 goals. He should have had that 10th goal, which would have given me my free cockeye barbecue, but missed a wide open net that I think my grandma would have hit. I'm sure he'll hit that at some point. So, there goes my little, I guess, my kibosh on that little. I'm like blanking on what I was going to next. Anyways, that was just my thoughts on, just making the right moves. Rodrigues has been one. And, again, he's just been sensational this year for the Penguins. Already touched on Kris Letang. Said he was on another level tonight again. At first, I couldn't hear the regular boos that Philly gives him, but also that comes with the territory, because the Flyers were not even close to selling out that game. I know, maybe a little ice cold, but, I never want to hear the joke from Flyers fans about the Penguins fans being bad because, they didn't even come close to selling out this game. Though, I will say, I don't blame a lot of the fans for coming to this one, because 7 of the regulars are out. And, that's just a bad product on the ice. That said, I still never want to hear that joke. Overall, I still also don't want to hear the saying that we've heard since 2014. Well, you'll see in a few years when we're so good and all this stuff, and, our prospects are going to be great. Right. Yeah. Your prospects are definitely going to be great, especially from what I saw tonight. I know this is, I'm supposed to be professional all the time, but I got to hit a little bit of digs on the cross-state rival here. Got to give the fans a little bit of what they want. I don't usually do that too often. I like to keep things usually strictly professional, just because, I cover the team and for this network and everything. But sometimes I got to go out of my shell a little bit and just, go a little dark mode. But, still, trying to think now I think I've hit on almost everything. Oh, no. Did not hit on the no goal call. It was going to make it 1-1. First off, Tristan Jarry gave Scott Lawton a hell of a whack right on his leg. I think he did not like that he crashed into him. And then you saw a little bit of a circus break out with, the players going after each other. John Butchergrass is like, well, that's Penguins Flyers right here. It's just like, well, maybe back in 2012 that was Penguins Flyers, but that's not Penguins Flyers rivalry from the last 4 to 5 years or something like that. But so I know Flyers fans will say it's a quick whistle. I agreed at first because it looked like it. I thought it was the same intent to blow call that we all saw from the Stanley Cup final in Nashville Game 6 when the Predators probably should have taken a 1-0 lead. The Penguins got a little lucky. But on second glance, Jarry had the puck covered under his pad at least for a second before it squeaked through, and then it was poked home into the goal. That's why the ref decided to blow the whistle. I understand why. I know it was probably a bit of a quick whistle, but, at the end of the day, that's what happens sometimes in the NHL. I know if the rules were reversed, a lot of Penguins fans would be pretty upset, myself included, but, the Flyers probably got a little bone there. That happens to every team around the league, at least once per season with a quick whistle. I mean, it's happened to the Penguins numerous times. It's happened to Philly. It'll happen to Washington, both New York teams, whatever rivals the Penguins have. That's just the nature of the situation with how the game is officiated at this point. So, that's all there is to it with that. Brian Boyle's goal, I mean, good God. Carter Hart is having a bad night when he's given up shorthanded goals to Brian Boyle. Key stat for you all here. This was the Penguins' first shorthanded goal against the Flyers since February of 2019. Kris Letang scored on Carter Hart. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep saying his name like that. If it gets annoying, whatever. But it's just, I can't not say it just because it's hilarious how the people in Philadelphia pronounce it. Anyways, that's the first one in almost 3 years since Letang did it in 2019. So I thought that stat was pretty cool. Another really interesting stat that I came across, during this 10-game winning streak for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they have outscored teams 45-20. That is a plus 25 goal differential. Even better, per Mad Chat of the Mad Chat and Eddie show. Shout out to them on DK Pittsburgh Sports. They do a hell of a job with all their Steelers and Penguins content. Go check them out as well after you listen to this podcast. I think his tweet said, actually, I can look it up right here. I have it right here. During this winning streak, the Penguins, again, they've scored 45 goals. The New York Islanders and the Arizona Coyotes, they only have 64 goals scored all year. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. 64 goals scored all year for two really bad teams. The Penguins have done, only 19 less than that in 10 freaking games. I mean, that is just how dominant this team has been this year. And I'll say it again. Why not the Penguins? Truly, why not? I'm going to get more into that coming up here in this last segment. I know I touched on it a little bit last night. I'm going to get into a little bit again just because of some tweets that I fired off. But, excuse me, they just have the makings of a contender for so many reasons. And again, I will get into that here coming up after this little commercial break. First, though, BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. That's a new year, and that means a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So I had this tweet tonight. I quote tweeted, D_nasty Darren02. Great follow on Penguins Twitter. If you are on Twitter, shout out to him. And I'll say it here as well. I think the Penguins can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the East. I think they can speed bag a lot of these teams in the conference. They've been doing that throughout these last 10 games. They can 100% take down Washington in 4 out of 7 games. They can beat the Rangers in 4 out of 7 games. I think they have much better forward depth than New York. The high-end talent is what scares me with them. I know Adam Fox is amazing, arguably the best defenseman in hockey. But and of course they have a hell of a goaltender, Igor Shesterkin. But with how Jari has performed, that's close to a wash. Defensively, I think the Penguins are a bit better overall, though obviously Fox is really good. But I think the Penguins can take down them. Carolina would be really tough, but I think the Penguins can beat them. Florida and Tampa, I think, would be the two biggest ones. But I really think the Penguins can play with those two teams when they're fully healthy. They have the forward depth to match up against them. They have the defense. They have the goaltending. The special teams, especially the penalty kill, is really good this year. The power play is starting to get better. You had a goal tonight. I haven't been this excited about a Penguins team since 2017. That is the vibe that I am getting right now with this team. 2017-18, I didn't have a lot of high hopes because, going for a three-peat, it hasn't been done in a very long time, over 2 decades at this point. They had that nice first-round series against Philadelphia, but they were gassed going into that Washington series. 2018-19, that team was fading and going nowhere fast. I was not surprised they lost to the Islanders just because, you're rolling out Jack Johnson in top 4 minutes and Justin Schultz. What are you doing there, right? 2019-20, the team is good. They just got Jason Zucker, but then, the season's paused and, anything can happen coming out of that. And you saw that with Montreal, beating them. Carey Price goes on a heater, whatever. Last year, I thought, I came close to getting that 2017 vibe. They were really good. They got screwed up by goaltending. This year's team, even with the subtractions from last year with Brandon Tanev and Jared McCann, I think is better than last year's team. With how everyone's going right now, with Evgeny Malkin coming back in the next few days, with Jeff Carter going to be getting a couple more practices in before he comes back, it's just everything is much better this year. Danny Shirey of DK Pittsburgh Sports had a great article on Mike Matheson this morning. He's been playing some of his best hockey this year. Even though I've dumped on him, quite a bit on the podcast, it hasn't been a lot lately. That's because, again, he's having his best season of his career. In terms of the underlying numbers with Matheson among Penguins defensemen, he's top 3 in almost every category in expected goals for, shot attempts for, scoring chances for. Go read Danny's article to look at some of the video and some of the other stats. I'm not going to give everything away, but he's been great on that third pair, and that's exactly what they've needed him to be. I know he makes a lot of money, but you got to get those moves right. I mean, I still would not have traded Patrick Hornquist for him. But the Penguins are getting the best case scenario right now with Matheson, and he is playing at a good level. And Chad Ruedel is, solid as ever. You're never going to hear a complaint from me from Chad Ruedel unless he has a blatant screw up at this point. So, why not the Penguins for me? At this point, it's just I feel like this year the league is wide open. I know Tampa Bay is the 2-time reigning champions. I get that, but they've played a lot of hockey these last few years, and teams going on three-peats, it's very rare. We all saw what happened with the Penguins, as I just said. I don't think Tampa's going to do it again this year. I think there's going to be someone that beats them. Potentially it's the Penguins. The good thing is, hopefully for Pittsburgh, if they can avoid one of the wild card spots and go through the Metro, I would much prefer that, because I don't want to go through both Tampa and Florida to get to the final. I would much rather take my chances, going through the Metro, because I do think the Penguins can, beat a lot of those teams in Metro. Excuse me. You look at the standings tonight, and Pittsburgh's right there now, and they're 3 points out of first. They have a game in hand still on Washington and the Rangers. Carolina has 2 games on in hand on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's only 2 points behind them. Pittsburgh is setting themselves up to go on an even hotter run here and potentially getting home ice in the first round. This team is 100% making the playoffs, bearing an unforeseen collapse. Just wanted to, end this saying, to everyone that listens to this podcast, it's from the city, roots for the team. You all have one hell of a hockey team here. I know DK said that on his site and on Twitter and, on his Daily Shot of the Penguins podcast, which he does a great job of. But I'm going to echo that here. We have one hell of a hockey team here. And, I hope everyone keeps sleeping on Pittsburgh. I fully want a lot of the national media to not pay attention to them. They're still only 4th in Metro. Keep it that way. I'm fine with that. The days of, the Penguins being the Stanley Cup favorite by everyone, that's all long over. There's better, younger teams at this point, but you know what? Excuse me. Bet against the Penguins at your own peril. And, this team's deep. They have top 5 underlying numbers. Their defense is awesome. They got a Vezina caliber goalie right now, and their special teams are damn good. And we also have a top 3 coach in hockey in Mike Sullivan. So feel like I feel like I've been saying the same things throughout the last few podcast episodes, but I'm in awe of how great this team is this year. And I hope some more people, start to realize that. I'm sure once they lose the first game, when Evgeny Malkin comes back, and in typical Penguins fashion, that very well may happen. The takes are going to be bad. They're going to be hot. Don't pay attention to those people. The ship will right itself if they struggle a couple of games when Gino comes back. It's just, I'm not going to get my panties in a wire here because they lose a game or two with Malkin in the lineup. He brings an element to this team that, few can do in the NHL, and they're going to be better off for it when he comes back. So that'll do it for this episode. Coming up for Friday, we will have not a full game recap, a full preview against the Dallas Stars coming up for that game on Saturday. Remember, that's a 2:00 Eastern game on NHL Network. It's also regionally televised, so you can watch it there. I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll be back on Friday for a full game preview of the one on Saturday against Dallas and a few other things as well. So I'll talk to you all then.